If you stop giving us more money, we will not let you see your grandson," my son and daughter-in-law announced with a smile. With that, the two left. In the end, just as my daughter predicted, all they wanted was to take advantage of me and live a rich life. They even used my desire to see my grandchild to manipulate me. I won't let them control me anymore. Hello, everyone. My name is Rebecca. I'm 55-year-old. After having 2 kids, I divorced their father and managed to get by on the child support he provided. Luckily, I could return to my old job, which helped me cover expenses and save a little. I tried to make up for their father's absence, but I might have been too naive. The reality hit me when my son got married. "Mom, could you help out again this month?" Well, I guess I didn't have much choice. My oldest son, Frank, married his high school sweetheart, Martha, about 6 months ago. They rented an apartment near my house, saying they were saving up to buy their own place. I even helped pay for a lot of their wedding expenses to support their goals. Still, Frank would ask me for money with a humble request. He told me how his company was struggling, how his salary and bonuses were not increasing. He explained that Martha's parents were sick and he had to send them money. He shared all kinds of problems with me. The more I listened, the more I felt he was being naive about his role as the family provider. Nevertheless, I kept giving him money for about 6 months after their marriage. Since we lived nearby, they often came over. We frequently shared dinners, and I thought Frank was bringing Martha over to spend time with me. Even though they were newlyweds, they seemed to prefer being with me rather than spending time alone together. I even hinted at this once, but Martha just said, "Your cooking is so good, Rebecca. I could eat it every day." Although I was flattered, Martha never showed any interest in learning my recipes or helping me cook. The years went by like this until my daughter Julia started applying to colleges. At that critical time, I asked Frank and Martha to visit less often, but they still kept asking for money. Once the college applications were done, they went back to their frequent visits. Around that time, Julia and Martha began to have disagreements. "Rebecca, your financial help has really saved us. The economy is so tough, and Frank's company isn't doing well. But that bag you're carrying, Martha, it's designer, isn't it? You seem to be doing pretty well for yourself." "Come on, Julia, this isn't that expensive. Besides, you always butter up Mom for money," Martha said. "And Martha, don't you ever think of getting a part-time job or something?" Julia retorted. "Julia, that's rude." Martha snapped. "Who's being rude here? Don't you feel ashamed relying on your parents for money?" Julia shot back. "Well, I do feel sorry for Martha because I'm not earning enough." Frank interjected. "No, not to Martha, to Mom." Julia clarified. "It's all right, Julia. Let's stop this. We're all going through a tough time. Let's be understanding." Rebecca intervened. It wasn't the first or second time Rebecca had to step in between her children during meals. She understood Julia's complaints, but believed they needed to endure a bit longer. Rebecca trusted they would soon say they could stand on their own feet and wouldn't need more financial support. Above all, she didn't want to burden her children with money issues, especially without a father figure around. These thoughts ran through Rebecca's head as she finished dinner and began cleaning up. As Rebecca heard Martha speak up, she turned around with a smile, thinking the moment she anticipated had arrived. However, Martha's words caught her off guard. Excuse me," Martha began. Rebecca paused, her smile freezing as she waited for Martha to continue. "Thank you so much for your support, Mom. It's really a big help." "It's okay. I'm sorry Julia can be a bit difficult." "Don't worry about it, but I have a favor to ask." "What is it?" "Recently, I've been thinking about having a child, but I'm not confident about our finances." "What?" "Well, it's hard to have a baby when you're older, isn't it?" "Well, I suppose it can be challenging. So I was wondering if you could increase the amount of support money a little more." Rebecca was shocked. Frank and Martha weren't satisfied with standing on their own feet. They were actually planning to have a child in their unstable financial situation. How could they think about having a child when things were so uncertain? Rebecca tried to gently suggest it was risky, but Martha seemed annoyed and pushed back. Don't you want to see your grandchild? It's not that I don't want to. I'm an only child, and I really want my parents to meet their grandchild soon. But having a child will make things even tougher, don't you think? I'll get a job too. We'll figure it out. Frank assures me we can handle it. Despite Rebecca's concerns, Martha insisted they would manage fine, and there was nothing to worry about. Reluctantly, Rebecca agreed to increase their monthly allowance from $1,000 to $1,200. When she shared this with Julia, her daughter was upset. "Mom, they're taking advantage of you," Julia said. But Rebecca still hoped for the day when her children would be independent. A few years after she increased their allowance, Frank came to their house alone. He knew Rebecca was off from work that day and seemed anxious to talk. "Is Julia here?" "I think she's studying in her room." "Why? Do you need something?" "No, it's okay. I just have something to ask of you, Mom." "I hope it's not bad news." "Well, I was wondering if you could increase the allowance a little more." I had expected it from Frank's demeanor, but I was deeply disappointed that both he and Martha continued to ask for money without any remorse. I took a heavy sigh and finally, in a stern voice, confronted Frank. "Enough is enough. How long do you plan on relying on your parents?" No, you're misunderstanding. Martha has been getting tests done at the hospital." "Is Martha sick?" "No, not like that. She's been getting tests done for childbirth, and it's turning out to be more expensive than we thought. We're short on cash. That's why I warned you about the risks of having a child without proper planning. What will you do if something unexpected happens? If the child needs medical care or if one of you falls ill? Begging me for money isn't a solution." "Don't be so upset. I didn't expect the tests to cost this much." "Isn't that strange?" I turned around at the sudden interruption to see Julia, who had apparently been in the living room. Frank looked irritated, trying to hush her, but Patricia cut him off and approached. "What kind of tests are you talking about for childbirth? Would a pregnancy test be enough to know if she's pregnant?" "I'm not sure. Martha went to the hospital alone. All I know is we're short on money." "Why did you let Martha go alone for something so serious? Usually, couples go together to see the doctor, right? Frank, you're off today, aren't you?" "Don't interfere. You're just a kid who doesn't understand pregnancy." "You're the one who doesn't understand Frank." There was some arguing, but Frank couldn't counter Julia's points and reluctantly left. While I thought Julia had a valid argument, I asked her, shouldn't we give them some leeway considering their situation? She sighed at me. "Mom, really? What do you mean? They're just after money. Their excuses are probably not true." "Why would you say that?" Unable to hold back, Julia went to her room and returned with her smartphone. She showed me several pictures. It was Martha's expensive bag. Martha claimed it's a cheap one, but I think it's real. She mocked my bag, calling it pathetic, and laughed. "This bag costs $1,200, the same as the monthly allowance?" "Yeah, and it's a high-end brand. No matter how cheap she says it is, she had a different expensive bag each time she visited. I think she's just using the allowance for these things." "You might be right. Martha had so many different bags. She was laughing at you behind your back, thinking you didn't notice." Then Julia showed me a recording. It was a conversation between Martha and Julia, recorded when I was at work, and Martha had come over. "Julia, I know you don't care about money and only carry cheap bags, right? Could you ask your mom to increase the money she sends me? You did something like this before and got money from Mom, didn't you? An extra $200 isn't enough. How about $1,200? She thinks she's supporting her son in his dreams with just $1,200. She should give us more, especially if she wants to see her grandchild." "How bold. Don't you think it's better for young people to spend money rather than older people hoarding it?" "Hey, Mom, are you still going to keep sending them money after they said all this?" Julia's voice was clear and firm, revealing she had secretly recorded their conversation on her phone. Hearing it, I felt both disappointed and deeply sorry for Julia. She had witnessed her brother and his wife begging their own mother for money. It was a wake-up call for me. I decided I needed to have a serious talk with Frank and Martha. I need to talk to Frank and Martha, I said. I'm glad if you're going to do that. I'll support you however I can, Julia replied. Thank you. The next day, I invited them over to my house. Martha arrived with one of her expensive bags, looking pleased. Julia and I sat down with them in the living room. I'm going to stop sending you money. What? What are you talking about? We can't handle this kind of surprise, Martha said, her voice rising. That's right, Mom. My medical expenses are adding up, and it's causing me a lot of trouble, Frank added. Why don't you save your money instead of buying those expensive bags? I asked. Initially trying to be humble and win my favor, Martha sighed heavily when I mentioned the bag. Don't you want to see your grandchild? I would worry about a child born to parents who are not financially responsible. So you're not going to help us even though your son is in trouble. I've supported you enough. I've been sending you money for 10 years now, Frank. It's time for this to stop. It was you. You must have said something to Mom. Frank accused Julia. Julia had nothing to do with this. It's my decision based on your actions, I firmly stated. Frank and Martha fell silent. I felt relieved that we could resolve things after a serious conversation, but then Frank scoffed and raised his voice. Well, fine. If you're going to insult me like this, then forget about ever seeing your grandchild. What are you talking about? Weren't you the one disrespecting Mom just now? Julia interjected. You kept sending us money because you thought I was worthless, right? Frank snapped. That's right. You kept giving us money because you thought Frank couldn't manage, right? Martha chimed in. What's your point? Sorry to say, unlike you, I'm actually capable. I've been earning my own money, so I don't need Mom's help anymore. You can stop giving us your pocket change. You're blaming us, yet you're admitting you can't survive without the money, right? Julia countered. Yeah, that's right. But don't expect us to support you in your old age after treating us like this. And even if we have a child, you won't see them. Stay out of our lives. With those words, they stormed out. Julia's earlier warnings rang true. They were just using me and wasting the money. Worse, they exploited my desire to see my grandchild. Julia looked satisfied as I pondered the situation. Don't worry, Mom. They'll come crawling back soon enough. But from now on, it's a new game, Julia spoke with certainty, and she was right. Just 6 months later, Frank showed up at the house in his work clothes, clutching his credit card statement. Listen to me, Mom. Martha is out there spending my money on bags and stuff like it's nothing. Oh, and why are you surprised now? That's harsh, Mom. Well, didn't she always behave like that, even when she was receiving $1,200 from me each month? $1,200. She told me she was only getting $500. You didn't even know how much allowance I was giving your wife, did you? That's disappointing. Rebecca recalled how she used to put the money in an envelope for them. She felt a headache coming on, realizing her son hadn't even bothered to check the amount before spending it. She's spending that $1,200 on all sorts of useless things, and our savings are dwindling fast. That's been the pattern. I don't understand why you didn't see it earlier, Rebecca said, her words also a self-critique of her past actions. Perhaps now, in a similar situation, Frank might understand her feelings, but he couldn't read in Martha, and he continued to rely on Rebecca for money. There seemed to be no end to their arguments, with Martha's spending outpacing their income. It was unsurprising they couldn't save even with $1,200 a month handed to them. Observing their poor financial management, Rebecca couldn't help but question where she went wrong in raising them, yet she continued to follow Julia's advice, unsure of what else to do. Mom, I don't know you moved. Read the message I received about 10 days after the move. Julia had anticipated that Frank and Martha would come asking for money again, so as a precaution, we sold our house and moved to an apartment near Julia's workplace. We didn't share our new address with them. As predicted, they went to our old place and, finding us gone, sent frantic emails. Frank's emails were filled with apologies and lectures about how he wouldn't care for my old age or his children's future. If they're this desperate, I wonder if they treated Martha's parents the same way. I doubt it. Martha's parents are like her, always looking for handouts. Julia informed me, sharing what she had learned about Martha's family. It became clear that from the $1,200 I used to give them, Martha had been passing on money to her parents. It explained how they managed such high expenses each month. And now, with their disposable income gone, it seemed Frank and Martha were feeling financial pressure from Martha's parents. I was speechless at how my son and daughter-in-law continued to rely on others. After seeing the emails, Julia simply said, "I told you so," and blocked them. I felt no sympathy or pity for Frank and Martha. Even if they apologized, they were proud of their education and qualifications, so they should work hard together. Absolutely, Julia. Enough trouble with Frank. I've helped him out, even dipping into my savings while working, but I've done enough. From now on, until you find a good partner, until then we will support each other.